Imagine waking up one morning and feeling deep in your bones that something in this world has gone strangely off track. Conversations feel hollow. People seem more preoccupied with TikTok drama than the direction their lives are heading. And despite being surrounded by more information than ever before, genuine understanding feels like it's fading. If you've sensed this shift, you're not imagining things. Today, we're diving headfirst into a deeply unsettling, yet eye-opening question. Why is society growing more foolish with each passing day? And more importantly, what can you do about it? Stick around until the very end, because the final insight could change how you see the world and your place in it forever. Before we go further, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and share this video with someone who's ready to wake up from the fog of mediocrity. Your voice matters here. When you drop your thoughts in the comments, you're not just speaking into the void, you're joining a growing community of people committed to cutting through the noise and reclaiming clarity in a distracted world. Now, let's begin. To truly grasp why society appears to be spiraling into a pit of superficiality, we need to face a hard truth: the very things that were supposed to make us smarter technology, social media, and mass education are often doing the exact opposite. Think about it. We have access to the largest reservoir of knowledge humanity has ever assembled. Every answer is just a Google search away. But despite this, studies consistently show that attention spans are shrinking. Critical thinking is on the decline, and people struggle to separate truth from fiction. It's as if we're so busy gulping down information, we've forgotten how to digest it. This isn't a new warning. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once spoke of the last man, a future person who avoids challenge, clings to comfort, and steers clear of deep thought. Sound familiar? Look around. Comfort is everywhere, but wisdom is getting rare. The media theorist Neil Postman also sounded the alarm in his powerful book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. He predicted a future where entertainment becomes the lens through which we see everything, even the most serious issues. And today, that future is our reality. Tragedies are turned into trending hashtags. Debates are reduced to viral sound bites. Nothing is safe from the spin cycle of attention-grabbing content. But why has this descent into shallow thinking accelerated so dramatically in recent years? One reason lies in how our brains process stimulation. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, known for his groundbreaking work on how humans think, revealed that we're naturally wired to take mental shortcuts. We crave simplicity. We prefer quick, easy answers over slow, thoughtful reasoning. And today's world is expertly designed to exploit that weakness. Social media, advertising, even political messaging, they're not made to encourage thoughtful debate. They're built to provoke, to make you click, to spark outrage. In this ecosystem, stupidity isn't just accidental, it's manufactured. Think about viral trends and memes. They explode across the internet, not because they're true or insightful, but because they're short, emotionally charged, and incredibly digestible. Meanwhile, complex ideas, they're left gathering dust in long-form articles no one reads. In ancient times, students at Plato's Academy would spend years wrestling with tough questions, challenging their own beliefs, and refining their understanding through dialogue. Today, we live in a culture that rewards whoever yells the loudest, not whoever thinks the deepest. Ask yourself this: when was the last time a trending video or headline actually made you pause and think deeply about morality, society, or your own life? When was the last time content slowed you down rather than pushed you to keep scrolling? More often than not, the digital world keeps us on a constant treadmill of distraction. Videos autoplay, notifications ping, new content floods our screens by the second. It's an information overdose. But what's missing is wisdom. This is the tragic irony of our era. A universe of knowledge at our fingertips, and yet a famine of insight. We're drowning in data but starved for meaning. And the consequences, they run deep. When we lose the ability to think critically, we become easier to manipulate. Misinformation spreads like wildfire, not because it's credible, but because it's exciting. A study by MIT found that false news spreads significantly faster and further on social media than real news. Why? Because lies are often more entertaining. Truth, on the other hand, requires context, patience, and depth, things the internet doesn't prioritize. In a culture obsessed with speed, nuance is the first thing to die. This erosion of deep thinking isn't just personal, it's collective. When entire communities forget how to engage in reasoned dialogue, society loses its ability to function meaningfully. Politics devolve into tribal warfare. Education becomes about test scores, not understanding. Entertainment celebrates scandal and noise, not substance. We end up valuing what's viral over what's valuable. But even amid this bleak outlook, there's hope. Recognizing the problem is the first step toward rebuilding. If we can see how the systems around us are pushing us toward shallowness, we can begin to resist them. And resistance starts with reclaiming practices that nurture the mind. Critical thinking, introspection, and meaningful conversation. These aren't relics of a bygone era. They're the tools we need to survive and thrive in a noisy world. However, choosing this path isn't easy. It takes courage. Courage to question what's trending. Courage to step back from the flood of content and engage with something deeper. Courage to think independently in a world that rewards conformity. As René Descartes once said, the greatest minds are capable of the greatest vices as well as of the greatest virtues, the same tools that are being used to dull our minds. Social media, the internet, even education can also be wielded to sharpen them, but only if we choose to use them with intention. And that choice begins with you. Start by examining your daily habits. Do you consume content passively, letting algorithms decide what matters to you? Or do you seek out material that challenges your assumptions and stretches your mind? Do you settle for headlines and hot takes? Or do you dive deeper, question harder, and refuse to be spoon-fed? You're not alone if you've fallen into the first category. That's how society is designed to function today. But that's also the very reason society is becoming less thoughtful. Distraction is no accident. It's the new default. Canadian cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker has written extensively about how the brain adapts to its environment. When we're constantly exposed to quick-hitting content, 15-second videos, punchy memes, flashy headlines, our brains adapt by craving more of the same. We get hooked on brevity, but that craving comes at a cost. Depth, patience, and the ability to sustain focus. What was once a mental muscle, strengthened by books and rich conversations, is now shrinking from lack of use. The result? A generation that can skim through oceans of shallow content, but struggles to swim in anything requiring endurance or depth. We're talking about more than just an individual issue. It's a cultural transformation. Think about how society once valued its wisdom keepers. Philosophers, educators, elders. These were the people whose job wasn't to go viral, but to pass down insight and challenge minds to grow. Today, those roles have been overshadowed by influencers. Their job is not to enlighten, but to engage. And engagement is driven by clicks, likes, and controversy, not contemplation. The algorithm doesn't care if you learned something. It only cares if you stayed long enough to scroll to the next thing. So what happens when popularity is mistaken for profundity? We get a society that confuses noise for knowledge. Even our education systems aren't immune. In many parts of the world, schooling has devolved into an obsession with standardized testing and rote memorization. Creativity, reflection, Socratic dialogue, pushed aside for the sake of efficiency and metrics. John Dewey once said, "Education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself." Yet modern classrooms often feel more like factories than forums. We train students to follow instructions, not to challenge them. We teach them to find answers, not to ask better questions. And when people are taught to avoid ambiguity, they miss the birthplace of real wisdom. Psychologist Carl Jung argued that true growth only happens when we're willing to confront contradictions within ourselves, within society, within truth itself. But in a world addicted to clarity and confidence, we reject anything that feels uncertain. And that rejection is a powerful tool, because when people fear complexity, they become ripe for manipulation. Politicians, advertisers, media giants, they've all learned that the average person is more easily swayed by confident, simple messages than by careful, complex truths. That's why slogans beat substance. That's why outrage beats dialogue. We don't just get dumber, we become more controllable. And when society no longer values discernment, it starts rewarding the wrong things. Performance over principle, volume over value, emotion over evidence. The internet is filled with people yelling loudly about things they barely understand and being rewarded for it. This isn't just annoying, it's dangerous. As Stephen Hawking warned, the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge, and right now, our culture is brimming with it. Perhaps the most chilling symptom of society's intellectual decline is our collective loss of memory. In the past, civilizations preserved their wisdom through stories, oral traditions, sacred texts, and intergenerational teachings. Wisdom wasn't just knowledge, it was legacy. It was stored in the minds and hearts of people who understood the weight of history. Now, we're living in a world where content is created to be forgotten. A tweet lives for hours, a trend lives for days. What was urgent yesterday becomes irrelevant tomorrow. The attention span of society is shrinking so quickly that even major events get lost in the blur of constant novelty. The Spanish philosopher George Santayana warned, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it," and we are repeating it, not because we lack access to history, but because we've trained ourselves to ignore it. Instead of learning from the past, we swipe it away. Yet within this crisis lies an opportunity. If ignorance spreads through distraction, then wisdom can return through intention. We don't have to keep sinking. We can rise, but only if we choose the habits that elevate thought and challenge the status quo. It begins with reclaiming simple, powerful practices. First, there's the radical act of silence. Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once noted that noise and busyness prevent us from knowing ourselves. In a world where silence is drowned out by notifications and 247 entertainment, choosing quiet becomes revolutionary. Silence isn't empty. It's a space where reflection lives, where ideas form, and where self-awareness has a chance to grow. Second, we need to rediscover the value of deep questioning. Socrates built an entire method of philosophy by asking, not answering. Imagine what would happen if people today paused before reacting and asked themselves, why do I believe this? Who benefits if I believe it? What's the evidence? These questions cut through the emotional fog. They force us to slow down, to think critically, and to look beneath the surface. And yet, in our current climate, asking such questions makes you a weirdo because thoughtfulness is becoming rare. Third, we must accept a hard truth. Thinking for yourself is hard. It's uncomfortable. It's often isolating. It forces you to challenge your own beliefs, abandon familiar ideas, and venture into complexity. But that's the path to liberation. Immanuel Kant called it enlightenment. Dare to know. Have the courage to use your own understanding. He believed that most people remain in intellectual darkness, not because they lack intelligence, but because they fear independence. It's easier to follow the crowd. It's easier to conform, but ease is the enemy of growth. So, ask yourself honestly, are your habits building your mind or weakening it? Are you consuming content that enriches you or numbs you? Are you feeding your curiosity or just feeding your need for distraction? Your answers define more than your intellect. They define your freedom. This brings us to a deeper, more unsettling realization. The decline in collective intelligence isn't merely a byproduct of modern life. It's strategic. Yes, distraction can be enjoyable. Yes, entertainment is valuable in moderation. But when distraction becomes the default and entertainment becomes the culture's lifeblood, something darker begins to unfold. Society's growing stupidity doesn't just happen, it serves a purpose. When people are distracted, disconnected, and reactive, they become easier to control. It's not just about ignorance, it's about compliance. A population lost in celebrity gossip and TikTok dances is far less likely to challenge corruption, injustice, or systemic failure. As philosopher Michel Foucault pointed out, modern power doesn't always operate through force. It operates through control of thought, through shaping what people focus on, and more crucially, what they ignore. Social media platforms have mastered this perfectly. Every ping, like, and scroll is meticulously engineered to capture your attention and keep it. Why? Because attention equals revenue. But more than that, attention equals power. And when your attention is manipulated, your thoughts soon follow. You begin to think in headlines. You react in extremes. You stop reflecting altogether. Even more disturbing is how this system thrives on division. A deeply thinking, united society is hard to fool, but a distracted, divided one, that's a dream for anyone who benefits from the status quo. That's why the algorithm favors outrage over understanding. That's why your feed is filled with tribal labels, identity politics, and emotionally charged narratives. Because when you're constantly fighting your neighbor, you're too exhausted to question those in power. Historian Christopher Lasch warned that modern culture promotes narcissism, a fixation on image, validation, and self-promotion. In such a society, the pursuit of truth is replaced by the pursuit of attention. And attention, as we've seen, is easy to monetize and weaponize. Look around. Public figures are often rewarded not for their wisdom, but for their volume. Influencers go viral not by sharing nuance, but by provoking emotion. Thoughtful discourse is buried beneath noise. This isn't just annoying, it's dangerous. Because when society prioritizes visibility over value, stupidity becomes profitable. And once stupidity is profitable, it becomes institutionalized. Noam Chomsky said it best. Propaganda is to democracy what violence is to a dictatorship. You don't need to suppress people if you can distract them. You don't need to censor ideas if you can flood the world with garbage. In the end, the simplest way to control a population isn't through fear. It's through confusion. Keep them entertained. Keep them arguing. Keep them dumb. And you'll never have to worry about rebellion. But here's the real punch to the gut. It's not just them out there doing this to us. It's us, too. Every time we scroll aimlessly through our phones, chasing the next dopamine hit. Every time we share a post without checking its facts, or argue online just to win, instead of understand, we're playing right into the system. We're not just victims of the problem, we are part of the problem. And that's what makes this crisis so insidious. Because it's easy to point fingers at corrupt leaders or manipulative media. What's harder, infinitely harder, is to turn the mirror on ourselves and ask, where have I surrendered my mind? That's the uncomfortable truth. But it's also where our power lies. Because if stupidity spreads through distraction, then intelligence can be reclaimed through focus. If manipulation thrives on division, then wisdom can be rebuilt through dialogue. If superficiality dominates culture, then depth itself becomes a revolutionary act. But that kind of transformation demands courage. The courage to swim upstream in a society obsessed with speed and noise. Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, wrote something profound. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. In a world built to trigger instant reactions, the simple act of pausing, of choosing thoughtfully, is an act of defiance. And it's one anyone can do right now. So how do we begin? It starts with awareness. Become mindful of what's shaping your thoughts. Ask yourself, why am I watching this? Who gains from me believing this? Does this enlighten or distract me? Without awareness, we become sleepwalkers functioning, yes, but not truly awake. The next step is discipline. Wisdom doesn't grow on accident, it's cultivated. That means choosing content that challenges you, reading things that take effort, listening to perspectives you disagree with, not to refute, but to understand. It also means limiting noise, set boundaries, turn off autoplay, unfollow outrage merchants, make space for your mind to breathe. Finally, the most powerful step, dialogue. We don't become wise alone, we sharpen each other. But only if we approach conversation with humility and curiosity. Philosopher Martin Buber talked about the sacred I-thou relationship, where we meet others not as opponents to defeat, but as beings to understand. Imagine what the internet would look like if we had more of that. Imagine what society would look like. You might be wondering by now, is it even possible to reverse this decline? Can a society so consumed by noise, so addicted to surface-level thinking, truly find its way back to wisdom? The answer is not found in politics or algorithms or institutions. It's found in you. History shows us time and again. Cultures rise, fall, and are reborn. The Renaissance rose from the ashes of the so-called Dark Ages. Ancient wisdom was revived, and new ways of thinking transformed the world. If it happened before, it can happen again. But it won't be triggered by the powerful. It will begin with individuals who choose differently. People like you, people who decide to value depth over distraction, truth over tribalism, and reflection over reaction. Because decline isn't inevitable. It's a choice, and so is renewal. We've covered a lot. The flood of shallow content, the erosion of education, the manipulation of attention, the profits made from stupidity, and the way power feeds off a passive population. All of this can feel overwhelming, maybe even hopeless. But the final, most important insight is this. The real danger is not that society is becoming more stupid, it's that you might come to accept it. You might surrender your own capacity to think. You might believe that clarity, curiosity, and courage no longer matter. That's the greatest loss of all, not intelligence, but agency. Because throughout history, wisdom has never been a mass movement. It's always been upheld by the few who chose to live differently. Socrates was sentenced to death for questioning his society. Galileo was silenced for challenging dogma. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated for daring to dream of a more just world. Each of them stood alone at first, but their refusal to accept stupidity as fate changed the world. And now, it's your turn. You don't need a podium, a platform, or a PhD. What you need is intentionality. What you need is the courage to think when others settle for noise. What you need is to start right now with your next decision, what you watch, what you share, what you say, what you seek. Because this isn't about saving the world, it's about saving your mind. And that's where all true revolutions begin. So if you're tired of being manipulated, of being numbed, of watching society drift into mediocrity, do something radical. Pause, reflect, question, choose. Every moment you reclaim your attention, you are pushing back against a system designed to dull you. Every time you seek truth instead of ease, you are lighting a match in a dark room. And when enough people light their own match, the darkness doesn't stand a chance. If this message stirred something in you, if it made you stop and think, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Subscribe to our channel and join a growing community of thinkers who refuse to go numb. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more you awake, aware, and alive.